Just to start off, what would be your earliest musical memory when you found music was starting to really create your interest?
I have to rely on my mother's memory for this, and she tells me I was very taken with Peter and the Wolf.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Obviously, it wasn't really deep.
Was there any particular stage you remember in your life when you found maybe you could make a career out of music, or you decided to make a career out of music?
Well, that happened after I moved to Canada, and I couldn't find a job doing anything else. I looked for what musicians call straight jobs first, because I wanted to impress the Canadian immigration people with my straightness. they don't care much for musicians as immigrants, and I just wasn't able to really find anything that appealed to me. I couldn't speak. I had schoolboy French, but not enough to get a decent job with. So I was sort of driven to play music professionally.
Right. Obviously, it was a huge turning point in your life moving to Canada after receiving your draft notice. Was that a difficult decision to make at the time, or did you experience any tentativeness about taking that course of action?
I was so young and foolish that I don't remember giving a whole lot of thought to anything that I did, no matter how momentous it was. But I guess I gave that as much as I did anything, but I looked on it at the time more as an adventure than anything else. I really wasn't aware of what the consequences were going to be. As I said, I was very young and stupid.
Yeah.
I'm still stupid, but old.
I believe you studied in Germany for a while, is that right?
Yes, it is.
What were you studying?
I studied German. I studied at the University of Munich. I wasn't a very good student. I found a job with a little bar band there and spent most of my time running around playing in nightclubs. But the beauty of the European university system is that no one takes attendance. And they treat you like adults over there, which is a big mistake for us visiting Americans. Our adulthood is retarded 10 or 15 years by our educational system. Anyway.
So what led you into music in Canada?
Well, as I say, I couldn't get a regular job, so I looked in the newspaper for a little band that might need a guitar player or a keyboardist, and I found one pretty easily, and from that point on, I just started meeting people, and, if a group lost a job at one place, well, then I knew somebody who had a job someplace else. And because I was from Tennessee, I had a sort of a cachet that a myth that Elvis, I believe, is responsible for. Somehow people from Memphis are supposed to know more about music than other people, and that served me well when I first arrived here.
Were you writing songs at this stage?
That's when I started writing songs. I was stuck with people who couldn't speak English, and as I say, I couldn't speak much French, so I spent long weeks and months by myself, and the alternative was watching hockey on the television, in the nightclub, in the hotel bar. You play in bars out in the province of Quebec, which are attached to hotels. It's sort of an odd system, but anyway, it's a bit like the British system. The pubs are somehow attached to hotels, and the band lives upstairs in the hotels,
right,
and then comes down and plays plays at night. Anyway, in my hotel room, I began to write songs.
You ever these days, you ever stop and ponder how your life would have panned out had you not made that move?
Yes, I have. I never get very far with it because obviously it's impossible to know, but I can't see that my life would have been a lot better. I go back and I see the people that I grew up with in Memphis. It's a common experience for people who travel somewhat and then come back to the old hometown. Somehow the people that you left behind seem a little stuck in their ways, and their horizons seem narrower compared to you and your enlightenment. That was the experience that I had when I went back to Memphis. I know it's not fair, but there it is.
In your time in Canada, what noticeable changes did you see there in the music industry and just in general?
In the country of Canada?
Yeah.
Well, I wasn't prepared for the whole separatism thing. When I first got here, and people explained to me that the French people were arguing with the English people, I couldn't believe that two groups of white people could go at each other like this. Where I came from, it was obvious who the other team was. They had different colored skin, and it was just a complete, and we had made slaves out of them, which seemed to be a much worse situation than prevailed in Canada. It just seemed to be a relatively mild thing to be arguing about. Of course, I had missed out on several hundred years of French-English enmity and all the rest of it, and I was very ignorant of that as an American. And so I've seen that develop over the time that I've been here. And yet, plus ça change, plus c'est la même chose. It hasn't really changed much. Essentially, it's still basically the same foolish argument. And I think my initial impression that it was foolish and really baseless still holds up.
By Albert Grossman for a while.
Yeah.
How did that come about, and what kind of an operator was he?
I met Albert through Robbie Robertson, whom I met, and he liked my songs, and he introduced me to Albert, who was managing him at the time, or his band, the band. That's how I met him. Albert was a very, very unusual man. The first thing, I guess, you would remark was his business acumen. And he was also he had a lot of varied interests and was an extremely interesting person himself. So that if you ever meet another person who knew Albert, and you discover that the conversation immediately turns to him and stays there for the next half hour while you discuss his eccentricities and strange things that he did. And he's just one of these characters that you don't forget.
As the years went by, your music began to take a more country direction. But was this a music form that you always had a feel for?
Yes, I did, but I wasn't aware of it. Growing up in the South, like a lot of white kids in my generation, I was very upset by the racial situation, and I reacted in an odd way musically, and I reacted by focusing almost exclusively on black music. And I almost made it a pride of not having any records by white musicians. A very few, but still, the white musicians I did like were country people. For instance, I would get a Jerry Lee Lewis record, and I would always wind up playing the B-side, which was always a country song. One kind, "You Win Again" was one great example. There's always a country song on the back, and that's what I love. So it was always deep in me, and it was just sort of a weird cultural prejudice that I grew up with that I had to shake off. And I started doing that in my 20s, and I began to tell you the truth, the black musicians sort of helped me along by becoming disco artists, and then eventually rap artists and abandoning the R&B that I loved. I don't know, they just seemed to quit playing it and go elsewhere. And at that point, I had to look elsewhere myself, and I found the things that I loved in R&B in country music. Oddly enough, the rootsiness, the simplicity of the lyrics, and the feelings, the sentiments, all those things were there. And I just began to realize that I was a white person, and I might as well just face it and quit trying to be, the Howlin' Wolf or whoever. That was beyond me.
Terrific answer. Tell us about the songwriting process for you. Do you carry ideas around with you for a while before you get them down?
I don't know how I would rank as a songwriter, but as an editor, I'm absolutely first rate. I take a song and just absolutely rewrite it 1,000 times. I really, and mainly the process is removing things.
Mm-hmm.
Just paring everything extra away.
Right, so you go for a lot of fine-tuning, obviously.
Yeah, I sing it over and over and over and over and over again, just as I go around doing my daily things, and until it just seems to flow naturally, and I could just as easily be saying it to someone as singing it to them. It flows that naturally to me.
Has that always been your method, or has that changed over the years at all?
That's always been my method, but I'm a stricter editor now. There are a lot of songs I wrote in my youth that I would not have let get past me now.
Mm-hmm.
In those days, my excuse is that we were all songwriters were somewhat under the influence of Bob Dylan and other people who wrote that sort of free form songwriting, or verse or poetry, whatever it was, and it was the fashion allowed you to be a little freer and less coherent. But as I got more into country music, the country people won't put up with that kind of thing. They want everything to make sense. So that means more work.
Yeah. If you had to pin it down to one particular thing, what for you is the best subject matter for a song? What are you most comfortable writing about?
There aren't very many subjects. I don't believe I make no pretense about novelty or to novelty, and I think that basically you're talking about either God or your love, your lover, whoever that may be.
Must be really satisfying. There's been many artists have covered your songs over the years, and that must be really satisfying to you. Are there any in particular that really stand out for you?
I like. There's a song called "Little Glass of Wine," which I like, and "Defying Gravity." There are a couple that I especially like. Yeah.
What about other artists' versions of your songs?
Oh, I'm sorry, you said cover version. I'm so wrapped up in my own self. Well, it's so hard for me to appreciate these things objectively that I can't give you a real answer from a musical point of view. It's more from a feather in my cap point of view.
Yeah, sure.
Which gave me the biggest ego kick. And I guess I'd have to. Wilson Pickett was definitely a real charge for me, and the Everly Brothers were another one. Those just really meant a lot to me. I didn't, I made no money out of those. So it's just who they were.
Yeah, it's understandable. How's your relationship with record companies been over the years? How have you got along there?
I've been really lucky in my business relationships, all of them. I know the music business has a bad reputation, but I guess I've just, like I say, been lucky. I've worked with really good people right along. Mainly because I guess it helps that I'm not a very popular artist, so there's never been any real inclination to steal from me. Yeah. I haven't got anything to steal.
You enjoy the recording process? You comfortable in the studio?
I love that.
Yeah.
It's what comes after that that I don't like. Going around trying to tell the radio people how good the album is, and saying things that just you just don't even believe yourself sometimes. It's a very unpleasant thing.
Yeah, it's just a game you have to play, I guess.
Yeah, it is, and it's too bad. Everybody's aware that it's a game, and you go through it, and you have to do it. I don't blame. It's no one's fault. It's just the way it is. But it's an awkward, sort of humiliating thing to find yourself doing.
Any new recordings on the horizon there?
Yeah, I've been working in my own little studio for the last few years, writing songs, and I'm planning on releasing an album of these demos that I've been making so painstakingly over the years. And as soon as I can put it together, I'll do that.
What about playing live? Do you do a lot of that these days?
No, I don't do that at all, John, not for the last... I guess it's been 9 or 10 years now.
Oh, that long?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And as a listener, what sort of music is grabbing your attention these days?
Well, since I'm living way up here in the north, away from my musical roots, I don't get good country music, and I don't get good gospel music up here in Canada. So I find myself listening to classical music a lot. It has very little emotional content for me, I have to admit. I wouldn't know one composer from the next, but it doesn't irritate me, and these days that's a really nice quality, and I like more talk radio and that sort of thing.
Yeah. If a young budding singer-songwriter came to you now and about to embark on a career and came to you for some advice, what things would you'd make a point of telling them?
Persevere is the very first rule. Personally, I wouldn't worry much about promoting yourself. Just keep playing in public in every possible venue that you can, and performing your music, and keep doing it as long and as loud and as often as possible, and let the world come to you. It will, if you just keep doing it enough.
Sound advice. Any regrets at all, Jesse? Anything you'd go back and change given the chance?
Oh yeah, I had a drinking problem that just, well, you can, I mean, it's a sad and very old, oft-told story, and It just made a mess of so many things in my life. If I could wipe that away, I would.
Sure.
Other than there's so many other regrets flow out of that it's difficult to separate them. But no, I don't think I have regrets. Certainly the people whose affections I may have trampled on or whatever. I'm sorry about too, but no. As far as career decisions, no, I don't regret anything.
Terrific. Okay, Jesse. Look, I won't hold up any more of your time. I want to thank you very much for many years of musical enjoyment, and also obviously for your time this morning.
Well, thank you, John, for your interest. I appreciate it. It's nice to hear an Aussie accent. It's a pleasure for me.
Thanks a lot. Take care, and good luck with the demos you're working on. We'll hope we get to hear them soon.
Thanks.
All the best.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.